If you want to know the real difference between privacy and security, then you're definitely not going to want to miss out on this conversation that I have with the Cloud Slayer himself, Mr. Alexandre Blanc, who goes deep into detail about the differences between those two and why it's important for us to take personal note of where our data is actually going, because big business may have a little bit of a different agenda when it comes to our privacy over the security of the data that they actually have access to. So with that, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go down below, hit that subscribe button and the like button so you don't miss out on incredible conversations just like this one. All right, let's roll the intro. What up, what up? This is Eddie Thomason here, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Simply Secure podcast. We have an incredible conversation lined up for you guys. You're going to be hearing from Mr. Alexandre Blanc. And I'm so excited because he has a wealth of knowledge and wisdom to share with you guys. So real quick, I'm not going to talk all about him. I'm going to let Mr. Alexandre introduce himself. So Alexandre, let us know who you are, man. What you excited about?
Hi, happy to be there. And I'm who? Who am I? I'm Alexandre Blanc. I'm, the Cloud Slayer. Oh, that's a joke. I'm known on LinkedIn for that. I'm actually working as a specific cybersecurity advisor at VARS Corporation, which is a RCGT company. RCGT is the name. And I do basically VCSO job advising organization about security posture. And despite all my public cloud blaming stuff, I do try to bring best practices and best security control and all. I want to set the ground because I know some people out there who knows me sometimes think at just my short connected equal hacked is just like, no, that's too bad, blah, blah, blah. No, the goal of that is waking up people. So don't take it bad. I like things well done. I don't really like the cloud myself, but I get we have to use it. I think that's setting the tone for the discussion. So that's it. And I'm more than 20 years background in IT and security. I've been working in private and military sector as a contractor for many security and infrastructure and also industrial systems, from radio communication to industrial pumping system and all kind of big industry stuff. So that would be about me overall.
Absolutely. And I mean, like you hit a couple of different things there. And like you said, we're going to dive into a bunch of topics here in this conversation. But here's what I first always like to start, right? Is the fact that I'm trying to figure out and help all of my viewers and maybe some of the different people that you maybe know, why or how did you get into cybersecurity? What was the thing that happened that was like, man, did you fall into it? Is it something that you planned to do from the very beginning? How did that happen? Give me the origin story.
Oh, well, Aurelio is, I think, people in IT since the 90s were managing servers. And we had to connect that stuff online more and more. And, at the beginning it was just firewall, proper rules, and access control. And then everything evolved. And back then, actually, the fun part is that I don't remember the cybersecurity being a thing by itself at the beginning. There were just, network admin, sysadmin, and that was it. But over the years, it actually moved on. And on my end, since I've been managing production environment, it was always part of it. So my title has always been up to a couple of years back, like IT director, IT manager, kind of. But the security side of things was part of it. I mean, protecting the infrastructure, keeping it back. Cybersecurity is about CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. And when you think about that, that was IT job at first. But things got more complex and specialized. And on my end, I was doing it like naturally part of the thing. So I kind of switched to it. And the official, cybersecurity title came after I was already in it. So I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. So to simplify that, you're basically saying you were typically in IT or you started in IT, kind of more so on the networking side, making sure that the CIA aspect was in place.
Correct.
And then over time, you just kind of like inherited this cybersecurity title.
Yeah. And also it came, aside with some side event related to my cloud stuff, about the leaky data and privacy things. So in my life, in the back end, I had also some, we all I've been facing challenges. And one of the challenges in my life brought me to the fact that I've been through threats. And these threats trigger in me like the need of privacy, data protection, because with the data, you got a lot of power. So people can actually use the data against you. And I did learn that very early. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like privacy focused. So when it came to security and privacy, at first it was like kind of split. But now
Mm-hmm.
with data is the new oil kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When you understand what you can do with data and how we can correlate a lot of collected information, it makes a lot of sense that security, data integrity, and protection is getting very involved in the privacy side of things, obviously. So
Mm-hmm.
now my fight today is privacy and security by default and by design, which is
Mm-hmm.
something I think we lost. And this is why we need more people in the field, because two things: the field was technical at first, but now it's also like a lot of admin work and compliance stuff, which is needed because technology grow and is like getting a big bubble around everything in our lives. So I
Mm-hmm.
think because it's overwhelming everywhere, we need proper management for that. And fun fact is that
Yep.
we, when we think about early 2000, only organization had a network with device and stuff and data centers and server rooms. But when you look at people's home today, this people, you have as many devices as we had in the server room back then. I mean, how many of you have more than 100 things connected? You tablet, phone, laptops, whatever smart stuff. And if you did take the risk of connecting your home, smart home, thermometer, light, and all that stuff, count the amount of IP you use with your network. Oh boy, that's a huge inventory that you have to manage. And we don't think about it. We just connect it. Who cares?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So you brought up a very interesting topic here, Alexander, and I want to spend some time really dissecting it because I don't think a lot of people know the difference between privacy and security, right?
Oh yeah.
So expand on that a little bit. Tell us first what, the difference between the two. What is privacy by default? What is security by default? And how do they currently play together?
Okay, so security is tied to the systems and the means and technical controls that we put in place to protect the data. But and the infrastructure, network asset, it's not focused on just data. It's focused on the infrastructure. And cybersecurity overall include physical access control. Like if you get, when you get to go to the office, you have to put a badge or a PIN code or whatever to get access to the rooms. So that's part of cybersecurity because this is protection security. Now, privacy is about only letting people who are supposed to see the data actually having access to it. And that was the only the original definition of privacy will be like only people who should see the data will see it. But it did evolve, and right now, because we saw many abuse, social media stories, all this. I mean, data is great for business. It's an amazing lever, and you can have a lot of value out of it, a lot of intelligence, and a lot of things driving your business in the development of your product. So this is a great asset. But on the other hand, when you have sensitive data like personally identifiable data or data that as data owner, which is the definition of GDPR and more privacy laws that come into play, the data owner is the one who the data belongs to. And privacy is here to make sure that the data owner has its data only used the way he wants it. So basically, birth date, preference, whatever is allowing to identify a person in a unique way would be personal identifiable information, PII. And that's what matters to privacy. And for sure, privacy by itself, like it's like tied to governance of the data, means that, as I said, only the people who are intended to see the data will see it. Now, how do you enforce that? You need security controls. So that's where it's connected with security. Security will allow privacy to exist. No security, no privacy. So that will be an explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's perfect because you really laid the foundation there. And I know, like I said, we did talk a little bit offline about your concerns about the difference between the privacy and the data side. It seems like, well, actually, before I, because I don't want people to feel left out of the conversation. So do this. Tell us your concerns of that you have between what's not happening enough between privacy and security?
So right now, we have a lack of collaboration on both sides, and also a lack of accountability and responsibility. So that's two words. I also repeat them a lot because it's easy today with the evolution of technology and the quick change and the cloud. It's everywhere. I don't like it, but it's there. And the issue I have with it, and it's really tied to privacy and security, is that we lack accountability and responsibility. You can see it from a very high perspective. So you see all the breaches in the news, like big acts and stuff. But
Mhm.
in the end, no one is really blamed or accountable for it. Okay, big corp XXX got breached, and the data of millions of people is out. What can we do? Well, okay, the traditional ways, they're gonna pay like credit monitoring for these guys, but that's about it. And what
Mhm.
action do we take to avoid this in the future? Because so now it's coming with regulation, fine are coming and stuff, but it's really a catch-up game. And criminals are not stopping. They know the value of the data. And one of the consequences that people don't think about, we have the culture of like, I have nothing to hide. That's something that
Mhm.
people say, oh, my data got stolen, and then right. So people don't know about the data, and the fun fact is the explanation also lay into the data. The data
Mhm.
shows that identity of people gets stolen. We see that in Canada, we see that in the US. And there is a
Yep.
terrible thing that we saw a statistic, and I think they didn't count for it in Canada, but they did count for it in the US, about the fact that people that are not yet above 18 are not counted under identity theft, and criminals that steal identity and apply for early credit, and the credit history is building up against the real people, because criminals stole the identity of young people, and they only realize that the first time they want to apply for credit, and they realize that that credit is absolutely a mess because the identity was stolen before. So that's a real life consequence. And now
Mhm.
what we see, just a pragmatic example of identity theft, let's say just in Montreal, I'm based in Quebec, close to Montreal, is that some
Mhm.
a percentage of the sale of the real estate is done through stolen identity. Basically, someone who stole your ID is gonna sell your home to someone else and use the information you share on social media, saying, "Oh, I'm going on vacation, 3 week in Cuba, whatever." Great
Mhm.
stuff. Okay, threat actor has their ID. He knows he has 3 weeks to sell your home because you won't be there. And trust me, hooking a door, it's not a difficult task. And this is happening for real. And people come back and their house is sold, and the buyer who did pay a down payment has the money out, and that's crazy, out of a stolen list. So that's real fact consequence. It's not yet massive, but think
Mhm.
about it. Society now define us as individual, as a person with a social security number. That's our unique ID, and we cannot change it. So that means that when our ID is stolen, we cannot do it anymore. We cannot move. And if you have criminal background due to stolen identity, someone abuse credit and stuff, you cannot travel anymore. You're stuck, and society is not ready to back people. So we have a big gap between social reality, government, how the
Mhm.
country work, and how technology is
Mhm.
evolving. So the fight of privacy and security is trying to catch up with the threat on the people. So it's start from companies, like big companies, but all the data is never lost. So I hope I don't speak too much, but the idea is that showing
No.
you it's the real threat in the end, at the end of the chain, is hurting people that had no
Mhm.
saying into any control of privacy and security. Because when Equifax went out, or whatever, Nissan Finance in Canada, my data went out on 4 big leaks. I had no control, and I'm a cybersecurity person. I know the controls, but I could not
Right.
do anything because that's a third party. So I
Mhm.
mean, my fight is do thing right, people. Do it
Yeah.
right, because you are accountable. We as people deserve to be respected on the privacy side of things. So that will be it.
Right. So, question for you then, Alexander, because you brought up a couple of different pieces, and one thing that really stood out to me was the privacy side and responsibility. Right. Obviously, you said the who's at the end of the day being affected is people,
Yeah,
right? Regular, everyday people like you and me,
yeah.
right? When you say responsibility, do we have a sense of responsibility for ourselves to prevent these things, or is this more so, companies that we're giving our data to? It's their responsibility to to make sure that our privacy stays, our information, everything stays private, right? So I guess that's a two-headed question. One side of it is, what responsibility do we take as individual users? And then second part of it, what responsibility should these bigger, companies be taking to make sure that our information stays private? Not necessarily secure, but like you said, private.
Yeah. So there are two things. One thing is that we have expectation out of common sense. When we give as human our information, let's say to a company to get delivery of a product, we do not expect that information to be used for anything else because we need the service to be realized. We need that thing to be delivered to us, so we provide the address and all that stuff that we need to pay, and that's fine. But when the transaction is over, we assume as an individual that it's over, and then you pay at the supermarket, at the cashier or whatever, it's done, it's paid, no longer a story, it's gone. And we think that in technology we expect the same thing as in real life, which is not the case because the more we use services online, the more we big our digital footprint. We build it, it's growing nonstop. And this company understood that this data has value. One first reason was to enhance the customer experience, and the other one is because it's allowing to trigger more businesses, more
Mhm.
transactions. But uh, it's fine on the side, it's bringing convenience, but on the same time, it has to be clear. And what happened is that on the business side, they had to comply with regulation and laws. And I've been speaking with privacy director of huge companies. And fun fact, I mean, the big ones, I got people that are in charge that came to me because of my share saying, you are so right. I cannot say publicly, but you're so right. So what I learned, and that makes sense. I mean, this is business, okay? And this is okay. Privacy director of big corporation are not here to make sure that people privacy is respected. They are here to make sure that the business can operate as efficiently as usual, trying to find any workaround they could in the regulation and law so they can actually process to be, more efficient. So that makes sense because I mean business is easier to make money. But we reach
Mhm.
a gap now where there is a notion of due care. I don't know. There is two things that come in mind when you speak about privacy and security. There is due care and due diligence.
What's going on? Listen, I just wanted to take this really quick break to see if you guys are actually enjoying the content that's inside of this show. Because if you are, it will help out the channel a bunch if you go ahead down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if this conversation has truly been fire. But only if it's been fire, though. If it's been some trash, let me know in the comments. Either way, I appreciate the feedback. All right, let's get back into it.
The process of due diligence is like when you get a M&A, merger and acquisition, a business is going to buy another one. It will go through a due diligence process, which means they're going to check each and every process and documentation of the business they purchase to make sure that the risk level of that organization match the requirement of the one that purchased it. So now, why I speak about that is that because we as individual are now, because of technology, our own risk manager. That means that we need to assess each and every service we subscribe to and claim for a right because our rights are not respected by default. And your question was about privacy and security by design and by default. And when we fight for it, it means that we want that by default and by design. We should not have to fight into terms and conditions and claim our right to compliance for our data, but rather it should be by default. And if the organization want to use it for anything else, we should be asked about it. Do you agree to do that? And not like a white sign check and unlimited access. It has to be that in that way. So that's the spirit of GDPR. I think it's a great enhancement in technology. Like big tech don't like it; they think it's slowing down the innovation, etc., etc. But I think this is needed because if we do not protect our identity as human, as individual, we are nothing. We are just number. And what how is the technology helping us, serving us, if we are just number and data? And there is that shift right now between technology serving us, enhancing our life quality, and right now we switch to serving technology because we are number produce money. We have an average income and spending habits that is actually qualified and quantified, and we are just levers. And the machine, the automation, makes it that we know you're going to spend that much. You are susceptible to this level, this level, because you feel that stuff. You rate it this way, so we know how to manipulate you. And that's a big shift between technology serving us and freedom, and technology enslaving us, and us just, having all our input being manipulated by that. So
Mhm.
I'm not like, it's not conspiracy theory. This is just practical marketing today, behavior
Yeah, absolutely.
analytics, the optimization. So we have to be aware of that. And for sure, when we bring security and privacy by design, this is killing this amazing automation machine that make it that you will spend money where the system tells you to.
Hmm. Yeah.
and is that
Well,
freedom?
that's
No, it's
why.
not. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was about to say that's why companies like Apple came out with the privacy standards and things that they came out with. I don't know if it was, I think it was the mid last year is what they came out when basically every app allow you have to allow them to track you compared to them just automatically tracking you, right? To be able to just provide that data and that information. So I think there are some people who understand what you've just communicated, right? Like it's very important to keep people's individual identities, right? Their secure information at its core secure, right? Because like you said, once you get if your security social security number gets hacked or stolen, you can't change it, right? You can't just go
Yeah.
apply for a new social security number. So I think that, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And it brings me to this point because I know you said earlier in this conversation that you had a situation happen where your data was leaked,
Yeah.
right? And you, as a cybersecurity professional, um, understanding like, man, my data is also, or I'm sorry, my privacy is also at risk for the information that is stored on, the different sites that I do business with, right? I'm curious to know because you said that site was third party, right? So it was kind of
Yeah.
like a vendor, is where the how the information was leaked. I want you to talk about the importance or the impact. Let's say the impact that third party vendors have on organizations, right? And more specifically towards their security teams, because I know a lot of the times the end users aren't necessarily directly connecting or engaged with those third parties, but the security teams are, right? So talk about that, that vendor type of relationship and what's important to look out for and be aware of, right? When you're forming these partnerships inside of the marketplace.
Yeah. So that's raising one key point, which is third party risk assessment. And that's from a business standpoint,
Mhm. Yep.
which means that, and this is where certification of business came into play. Because there is no, I mean, aside of the due diligence process that you do, and how many companies do actually go through the due diligence process if they just contractually sign an agreement with a third party? Usually it's just like the legal board that will review that, or the lawyer of the organization says, oh, terms and condition looks fine, that's actually aligned with what we do, and that's okay. But they don't go further, because that partner is going to bring feature, functionality, or capability that the organization need, and then we jump onto that. Thing is,
Mhm.
it's a very dynamic landscape, and we see it ourselves. How many times do we go and check and see if the term and condition of an online service did change? Because all these term and conditions specify that they write, we reserve the right to change that stuff at will or per the business need, whatever. And that's changing a lot. So when you have a couple of partners or providers, third party, which themselves rely on third parties, how far are you gonna go into that? So
Mhm.
it's, at some point, the I mean, due diligence as the final user or the final contractor is something that you cannot really achieve without proper compliance and regulation. because
Mhm.
we need a baseline rules that make sure that there won't be abused on the data and privacy, because there is no way you dig into that. And if you think about that and you look at online services, I think 30% or even more use AWS cloud services. When you go online and I think this is all AWS mainly, because it's one of the leaders. And the terms and condition of AWS, which people barely read, specify that if you use the platform, any of the services, all the acceptance that you did, the rules, has to be sent to the end user, such as AWS reserve the right to move the copy to whatever location to ensure the management of it. And people
Mhm.
are supposed to tell the end user about that. But I didn't see these in the terms and conditions saying like you go to I don't know whatever provider. They don't tell you, oh, by the way, we use AWS. Who has access to the data? And for the purpose of allowing the service to work, they are allowed to copy that stuff to that location. So that's not there. So the due diligence has limitation right now, and this is where we have work to do to give back power to the data owner, which is you and me in the end. But and anyone, but not
Yeah,
us alone.
yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. I think you hit on a couple of different things because I had another conversation with another good um, friend of mine and a fellow CISO who communicated the importance of doing your research, right? Like you said, due diligence on not even your third party, but fourth party. Because, like you said, it's you can continue to go deep because
Yeah,
those people also have third party
yeah.
providers and things for them, right? So they're so, actually, this would be a great thought to expand on. So, like, when you think of that, there's so many different areas in one organization where a breach can happen just based upon third party vendors, right? People
Yeah.
that you're working with, and then the parties of those vendors, and then the third parties of those vendors, right? Um, just curious, how do you button that up? Do you have a certain amount of vendors that you only allow, right? And then like if you're doing work with say a third party vendor that's helping with endpoint protection, right? Do you require that their third party vendors are already vendors that you do business with, or do you have to go and vet those companies too? What does that look like from your perspective?
Well, I'm a paranoid kind of guy, and I do the risk
Mm,
assessment and always think about the worst. So that's where I go, and this is why I'm, defending the fact that we should own our stack and all of as much as we can do. Now,
mm,
it's a risk-based decision. How do I assess that stuff? What it brings, what I can bring, and what the compliance and regulation ask me to do. That's um, if you are a small company and you have no regulation at all, you will do as best as you can to be lawful and comply. And most likely, you will not dig too much into the provider. Like even if you look at insurance, do you know who's the financial stuff behind it? Are you sure they're gonna pay you back? All that stuff. People don't are not used to do it. Only risk managers, and risk managers only exist in big corporation where there is big money and therefore big risk and big potential impact. Now,
mm,
that's something that is being brought back to smaller businesses because we see that this is all interconnected, as you say, fourth party integration. And how many organizations rely on finding a small service provider that provide a little thing that is an add-on on their stuff, which link to a bigger stuff. And we saw that, everybody speak about that, SolarWinds scandal that we had back then, and the
mm.
supply chain attack, because we speak about supply chain security.
Yes.
Thing is, what happened to them could have been happening to anyone, and it went so
Mm,
deep. That's the first time I think we saw a proper public due diligence process digging the hell down where that thing was going. And we saw it was like tentacular, huge, unlimited kind of stuff. And even not everything went public. So everything is interconnected. So the risk is really complex to manage today. And sometimes I believe that we might go too fast on the evolution of technology in regard to data and privacy protection to actually properly assess the risk from a people standpoint. And as I said, this is why I speak about technology no longer serving people, but people serving technology, because technology serve producing money, where people, we say people are the product. Well, in a way,
Mm,
but it's not that simple. It's about business, performance, market, and everything. And if you think about that, it's all tied together. When we have RSSP, like retirement plan, where we
mm,
play, and this is about money. Everything is about money. You place that
yeah.
money in it, and the bank invests in organization that make sure that you get 5%, 7% performance each year. Okay, depending of your risk appetite. But this
Mm,
investments is relying on you buying this product from this technology stuff. So it's a full round stuff. So the,
mm,
security and privacy cannot bite too much to bring back common sense because the whole system is depending on it. It's feeding himself. So it's a daily fight. And when we spoke about that, I don't know if it was our previous discussion, and what I'm trying to achieve there is bending a little bit the trajectory of the market and technology to consider privacy and security by design. But I'm well aware that I'm not going to take down the cloud. I know I would like to get privacy and security full pin, but I know it's not going to happen. And we are not going to have privacy and security by default and by design soon enough as it should be, but
mm,
we can only push it toward. Evolution is something that moves slowly. Change management is a complex process, and when everything
mhm.
is connected to everything as it is today, well, making that thing move is quite challenging. So
Absolutely.
so it's complicated. Yeah.
So, question for you, and this might be the last one that we have before we have to wrap it up, and hopefully this isn't exactly putting you on the spot, but I'm just curious because you brought up again great points about how do you do privacy by design, right? Security by design. So I'm just curious. Let's take small, just a scenario, right? Take small. Um, let's say it's a small bank, small credit union, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, they have a bunch of different data that's already inside their system. They got to keep this information, the privacy of their members and everybody else, right? If they had no security team in place right now, right? Or they had a very little security team, or maybe they were just being in compliance, right? What would you recommend to them to start creating a very secure space, right? Secure space for their members as far as protecting that privacy, but also, just securing their overall information and data that's being ran through that business on a daily basis.
So it's a challenging thing again, many aspects into that. First of all,
Yes.
banks and credit union are engage into protecting the value of your asset, not the privacy side of things. And banks and credit union are the first data seller on the market in regard to people's behavior. Your credit card expense, everything is sold to Google and the big player in the data field. Because if you read the agreement, you are protected for a maximum amount of money, but not on the data side. So yes, we need data to be protected as well, and that's going to raise the cost of the accounts, of the maintenance of the accounts, because they make money out of your data. The cost is lower for
Mm,
you to get an account on a credit card. If suddenly you cannot pull the data of the credit card, oh boy, all the transaction is going to be quite more expensive. That's one thing. Um,
yep.
in regard to credit union, how they should handle it, well, they have to comply, PCI DSS, which is not an actual regulation or private regulation from the credit card industry. It's not a governmental requirement.
Hmm.
Is one thing that make them have to handle anything related to the credit card in a certain way with protection and security control. Now, privacy and security by design is something that has to be integrated in the workflow and the change management process. And this is not something that's going to happen overnight because we cannot shut down the business and rebuild everything from scratch. So the way it has to be implemented is include that check mark, privacy and security, in the change management process. So each time there is a new iteration, and that's valid not only from credit union but any business after all, make sure that you
Hmm.
actually address the privacy and security into the change management process. So as each time there is a new iteration, a new release, a new change, there is a little bit an enhancement as well on privacy and security. For sure, if regulation come and say, oh, you now need to protect the PII, well, you have no choice but have a full task focus on the PII protection. But
Right.
yeah. And it's also about the brand and the trust of the market, because right now it's a really a hot topic. And you spoke about Apple. Apple are really an opportunistic organization. When privacy is hot, they will jump on it. I mean,
Mhm.
we have to keep in mind that Apple came with this amazing innovation and smartphone. The first smartphone who got actually caught sending people move every night at midnight to steal their actual location. So it's very nice of them saying they care about privacy, but they care about business, and they are very smart, like all the big tech. These people are amazing business people. They know how to do it right, how to handle the communication and stuff. So it's cool, and I'm happy seeing more privacy in Apple. But we have and we need to keep an open eye and make sure that regulation come into it, because I don't think, I mean, even us, if we are, human are lazy, and if we have to do it by our own, will we do it? I mean, you can, if we can take shortcut, we will take shortcuts, because that's human nature.
Mhm.
So if we
Yeah,
want some expectation, we need regulation, because without regulation and fines, I don't think it's going to move.
absolutely. Well, Alexander, I think we can come back and have a whole conversation about what you just ended with, right? Like how do we have more regulation around privacy and keeping private information private, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But for this episode, we're gonna we're gonna chop it here, right?
yes,
But here's what I want you to do. I do want you to share with people what's the best way to get in contact with you. Is it through LinkedIn? What's
yeah.
the best way to reach out to Alexander?
Yeah, LinkedIn is so far my playground.
Mhm.
You can find Alexandre Blanc, cybersecurity.
Okay.
And please don't stop at my first cloud rent, because I'm renting a lot about it. The whole goal of my share, I try to bring added value in it. For every single share, there is a question, which is, did you think about that? And it's a good time to think about that, because if you think about that, learning slowly, you're gonna enhance your posture and make it better. There is no bulletproof stuff, no bulletproof security. So we walk the walk together. That will be it.
I love it. I love it. Well, there you have it, guys. Alexander Blanc, absolutely incredible mind, shared a lot of gems, a lot of information that you guys can 100% glean from and apply into everyday life inside of your security teams. So excited to have you guys here. And this is Eddie signing out from the Simply Secure podcast. We will see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.
So, what do you think? Was that helpful? There's incredible conversations just like this one all throughout this channel. The links on the screen, the videos that you'll see, is actually other videos that's very similar to some of the conversations that I had right here with this guest. So feel free to go ahead and binge watch some of these incredible conversations with other cybersecurity leaders within the space. And if you found value, feel free to go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit the like button, because it helps YouTube push this content and this channel to other people in the industry just like you. And obviously, those are the people that I'm trying to reach. So I appreciate you, and look forward to seeing you again on the next one. Deuces.